Oklahoma City run. LeBron for three. James against Caruso for the lead. No. Rebound, Hartenstein. There's the buzzer, and the Thunder have won and swept and are headed to the Western Conference Final.
5.5 remaining. They're out of timeouts. James on the drive, fires a three. Off the mark. Ilgauskas tips it. Ball knocked loose. Kevin Durant way outside. Delivers! Kevin Durant from downtown. It's a 6-point game. James comes out of the pack. James on the drive, goes inside. Stop, shot block, gets it back. It's over. It's over.
When you really look back over the last 2 decades of NBA basketball, one pattern people constantly bring up is how LeBron James-led teams tend to go out bad once playoff elimination starts creeping closer. Because throughout his career, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 4 different times LeBron has been gentleman swept in the postseason, losing the series 4-1 in convincing fashion. And on top of that, girl, there have also been 4 separate occasions where his teams got completely swept off the floor 4-0. You had the 2007 finals against the Spurs, 2018, 2023 versus Denver, and now this 2026 loss against the OKC Thunder added onto the list. That's why people always say when LeBron teams lose, they usually don't go down in some dramatic 7-game war or a heartbreaking Game 6 finish. Nah, listen to this. When these teams lose, they often get flat out overwhelmed in 4-1 series or completely run off the court in a sweep. And when you go back to that very first final sweep against San Antonio in 2007, that series was viewed as absolutely brutal for the league at the time. The optics were so bad and the gap between the conferences looked so wide that people were seriously debating whether the Eastern Conference was even competitive enough compared to the West anymore. That's how lopsided and embarrassing that finals matchup looked on the biggest stage possible, and people were talking about it like it exposed the entire conference.
Take the 6 division winners, then take the teams with the 10 next best records, seed them 1 through 16, and you'll have a Phoenix-San Antonio final that would be in it.
Back then, people were even throwing out ideas like taking the 6 division winners, adding the next 10 best records, seeding everybody 1 through 16, and letting the playoffs play out that way, because folks thought a Phoenix versus San Antonio finals would have been way more entertaining. And then you had people saying the East and West should just fully mix together altogether, while analysts like John Hollinger from ESPN were already breaking down how something like that could actually work. But of course, the biggest issue was always whether the TV networks and the league office would ever agree to something that drastic. Now, fast forward to LeBron picking up the 4th sweep of his career and getting sent home 4-0 again, and listen to this, the media defenders are already gearing up to protect him like always. Because if you follow LeBron fan logic, anything positive that happens automatically gets added to the legacy conversation immediately. But the second something ugly happens, bad performances, playoff collapses, ugly exits, suddenly none of it counts against the resume anymore. That's why people say LeBron fans have mastered this game, where every win gets amplified while every loss somehow comes with a built-in explanation. And hold up, this has been going on ever since that 2016 finals comeback changed the entire conversation around him. When you really break down all 4 sweeps, there's always some kind of excuse, caveat, or redirect waiting right there afterward. Back in 2007 against the Spurs, the excuse was that he was still too young and inexperienced for that moment. Then in 2018, when he got swept again, people instantly shifted the blame toward the supporting cast and said he didn't have enough help around him. In 2023, after Denver swept them, the conversation became about Anthony Davis not showing up enough and nobody being able to stop Nikola Jokic. And now, in 2026, girl, the narrative somehow circles all the way back to him being older, lacking help again, and not having enough from his co-star. That's why critics look at these 4 different sweeps and say the pattern never really changes no matter what stage of LeBron's career we're talking about. Whether he was young, in his prime, or now deep into the veteran years, the one constant in all the conversations is that fans never want to place the blame directly on him.
Reeves holds, looking, finds James, takes a pass, falling away, baseline shot, side of the backboard.
It's not your fault.
James with the catch. Oh, he missed the layup.
Shot clock at 2. James for 3. Rebound tap.
Now, one thing I really want to hammer home when talking about LeBron's 4 career sweeps is that going into those matchups, almost nobody actually predicted his teams would get completely swept off the floor. But somehow, years later, the overall narrative shifted into people saying those series were understandable losses because LeBron supposedly didn't have enough help around him anyway. Take the 2007 finals against the Spurs, for example, because when all the expert predictions came out, nobody was talking about a clean sweep happening. Out of the 4 major expert picks, 2 had San Antonio winning in 5, 1 had the Spurs in 6, and another even pushed it all the way to 7 games. So while people expected Cleveland to lose that series, hold up, nobody expected them to get embarrassed to the level they actually did on that stage. And then when you move ahead to the 2018 finals against Golden State, the predictions tell the exact same kind of story all over again. There were 24 expert picks total heading into that matchup, and only one single person out of all 24 predicted the Warriors would sweep Cleveland in 4 games. Meanwhile, 15 of those analysts had Golden State winning in 5 games, while 6 more thought the series would at least stretch to 6.
A narrow victory in Game 3, total domination here in Game 4.
I let the emotions get the best of me and pretty much played the last 3 games with a broken hand, so.
James up and under, throws it off the backboard. Oh, what a perfect pass.
Guys like this brace, huh? Guys like this cast, huh?
And then 2 other analysts even believed that the final series would push all the way to a Game 7, which really tells you what the overall expectations were before things tipped off. So once again, when you look at the sentiment surrounding the matchup beforehand, almost nobody truly expected LeBron's team to get swept in that fashion. That's why people still look back at that finals performance as an embarrassing collapse on the biggest stage possible, because the outcome ended up being way uglier than anybody predicted.
The reason I like the Lakers in this series is because I actually think this is a LeBron series.
James drives, gets inside. Shot in and out, Davis, tip won't go. James directing traffic, 3-pointer. Long rebound, Reeves chased off the 3-point line, gets inside to James. Stolen by Jokic.
The altitude won't be as big of a factor. I like the Lakers for tonight. I like the Lakers in 6.
I agree. Now, when you get to that latest sweep in 2026 against the OKC Thunder, even though most people knew the underdogs were the Lakers, the expectation still wasn't for them to get completely wiped out in 4 games. If you go back and check the expert predictions, out of the 12 total picks, 11 of them did not have Oklahoma City winning the series in a sweep. So when you stack all 4 of these sweeps together across a 20-year stretch, the biggest common thread is pretty obvious once you really pay attention to it. Yay, LeBron's teams usually weren't the favorites heading into those matchups, but almost nobody predicted those series would end in outright 4-0 beatdowns. And listen, for a team to go out in 4 straight games like that, people are always going to view it as a brutal indictment on the roster, the leadership, and the superstar leading the charge. Now, another thing worth bringing up real quick is that most NBA legends since the 1990s have been swept at some point too, but the difference critics point out is the frequency and how bad some of those losses looked. Take Michael Jordan, for example, because he only got swept twice in his career, both coming early against the Celtics in 1986 and 1987 during his 2nd and 3rd seasons in the league. So Jordan finished with 2 playoff sweeps on his resume, while LeBron currently sits at 4. Then you look over at Kobe Bryant, who was swept 3 different times during his career in 1998, 1999, and again in 2011. Hakeem Olajuwon only had 2 sweeps attached to his playoff resume, including that 1991 series that was still under the old best-of-3 format. Tim Duncan also finished with only 2 sweeps in his postseason career, coming in 2001 and 2010 against the Suns and Lakers. And then there's Shaquille O'Neal, who critics always call the king of getting swept because he was eliminated in a sweep 6 different times throughout his career. Those came in 1994, 1995, 1996, 1998, 1999, and then again in 2007, which means Shaq dealt with playoff sweeps whether he was young, in his prime, or later in his career too. That's why some people say the Shaq and LeBron comparison actually deserves way more discussion than it usually gets. Because when you break their careers down, both players were built around overwhelming physical dominance and athleticism more than anything else. Both guys finished with 4 championships, even though many people believe the total should have been higher considering the talent around them. Both superstars also moved around to multiple franchises throughout their careers and routinely played alongside 1 or even 2 all-star teammates at different stops. And on top of that, critics say both players had stretches where their teams flamed out badly in the postseason and got swept in embarrassing fashion. So when people compare Shaq and LeBron career paths side by side, hold up, there really are some eerie similarities there once you start looking deeper. The difference is that when people talk about Shaq's 6 playoff sweeps, most fans just accept it as part of his resume without trying to explain it away. You rarely hear Shaq fans constantly blaming coaches, teammates, or every other outside factor imaginable whenever those losses get brought up. But when it comes to LeBron, the conversation still turns into excuses about the roster, the coaching staff, injuries, or somebody else not doing enough. At the end of the day, though, a player's resume is a player's resume, and 10, 20, or even 40 years later, those results are still attached to your legacy permanently. So whether people like it or not, LeBron being swept 4 different times in the postseason is a real part of his career story that can't simply be erased. And the wildest part of all this is that the so-called king of longevity has now been swept in 3 completely different decades, something nobody else in NBA history has ever done. But anyway, y'all let me know what you think about all this down below. And as always, appreciate everybody for watching and rocking with the channel.